Hey, we're back at the top again today with another perfectly timed video. But why is it perfectly timed? Well, that's because I was working on this video before Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee was officially revealed. It did take me a while though to use stats to set this video up. Combined with everything else I do during the week, it took me 2 to 3 days to complete it. So those days were spent trying to figure out which were the best 10 Pokemon that did the best during the story in Kanto. And we're mainly going to focus on Fire Red and Leaf Green since Red and Blue were pretty buggy. There is a difference to this video between others, although the idea is derived from said videos. Eriyzo looks at the best starters, while MysticUmbreon builds the best team. This series focuses on and tries to find the top 10 best Pokemon team options using a stat formula looking at all of the important matchups, such as gym leaders, your rival, Team Rocket, and the Elite Four. The formula takes into consideration the matchup with each individual Pokemon on a maximum scale of -5 to 5, which can add up depending on the circumstances. You really don't want to leave that Charizard in on that Golem there, friend. But all in all, this video is supposed to provide the best options for you to pick for your team. However, there is one rule. I do want to stress that only 2 Pokemon representing each type will be charting on this list. So without any more delay, let's dive into the top 10 best Pokemon for your Kanto team. Let's go. Well, this might cause a firestorm against me. This early? Yes, this early. And so number 10 is Dragonite. And before you pick up your pitchforks, allow me to explain. Depending on how late a Pokemon is available into the game, it will affect its final score. Since Dragonite is available around the time you may or may not have already defeated Koga, it becomes a little bit tricky. But we'll begin after Koga, as you can only get a Dratini in the bodies of water in the Safari Zone via a Super Rod, which you can pick up on Route 12. See, Dragonite tends to not have many type advantages this late in the game, as it really only gets a safe advantage from its flying type. Against the gym leaders, it really is in a stalemate with Sabrina and Giovanni, and it doesn't really have trouble with Giovanni's Rhyhorn or Rhydon yet, as at this point in the game you shouldn't have a Dragonite, unless you force-fed it steroids. It does have a much better time against Blue, but that's only due to walling his starter and any combination of Growlithe, Gyarados, and Execute depending on the starter you originally picked. The problem lies in the Elite Four, where it gets dumpstered by Lorelei and runs a small risk against Bruno's 2 Onyxes, but they're Onyx, so you don't really have to worry about that. It evens out against Agatha and Lance, just be wary of taking a Dragon-type attack from the latter. And yet again against Blue, we run into the same resistances it had in the battle before Victory Road. All in all, if you're looking for a Pokemon that can dish out the damage and resist the elements, Dragonite is the way to go! Another fan favorite, Ganga. Hey, you leave those pitchforks on the ground. Let me explain. There's a good reason. Okay, now then. Gengar is in that same issue with a lot of the middle ground matchups. You can finally nab a Ghastly or a Haunter in the Pokemon Tower, but you need the Sylph Scope from the Rocket Game Corner to catch one in the Pokemon Tower. And by then, you will probably have already defeated Erica. But after you have traded with a friend, you can get a pretty solid Pokemon for your team. But I have to stick with Haunter because who needs friends, right? Starting things off, like I was saying before, Gengar really goes neutral with a lot of the gym leaders. And I mean neutral. It literally has a neutral rating against the rest of them. Sure, you have a type matchup against Sabrina, but you run the risk of getting blown back due to the psychic type weakness Gengar has. Luckily, you are immune to most of Giovanni's team during both the Silph Co battle and in Viridian Gym. It does decently against Blue's team, but most of its usefulness lies in the Elite Four. Well, just Bruno, really. Being immune to the stab attacks from Hitmonchan, Hitmonlee, and Machamp will come in handy. But really, Gengar does average against everyone else in the Pokemon League. Really, the only reason you would pick one up is if you're not really having any problems against most of all of the important characters in the game. There's nothing else to it. So now we're going to head back to the Safari Zone to pick up the 8th best Pokemon and the best Grass-type option, Executor. That might be a spoiler, but there's a reason why this is the case, and I'll get to that later. See, Executor really excels due to its Psychic type, but most people view it as a Grass type first. In this region, the Psychic type is actually pretty powerful. It goes even with Koga due to cross weaknesses, where they both have weaknesses to each other, and the same but with resistances with Sabrina. It's a little bit risky, though it especially is as you get flambéed by Blaine. but it evens out as both battles with Giovanni, Executor will just execute nearly his entire team, though you will need the help against the Nidopair he has. With Blue, you keep running into the issue versus his Pidgeot and Growlithe, but this is another situation of a late bloomer. Get it? Because it's a plant.
Shut up!
In the Pokemon League, you tend to skate on by versus Lorelei and Agatha, but if it's strong enough, that shouldn't be an issue, as both are weak to each other, unlike Lance, whom it just gets outright walled by. The fun and games are really there when you face Bruno and Blue, as you have a lot of advantages over the two. All in all, if you need a Pokemon that can help late game, Executor is certainly a solid choice. So first, with this next entry, we're going to need to pick up a Poliwag or Poliwhirl, because in order to get Jinx, we need to trade for it using said Poliwhirl. Problem is, you need a Good Rod first, which you get in Fuchsia City. Then, you can finally trade for that Jinx in Cerulean City. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, we can look ahead to see how Jinx is actually useful in your playthrough of Kanto. It's another one of those Psychic types dominating most of the game, and when I mean it dominates, it really does dominate. Jinx has an easy time with Koga, Giovanni, both of Blue's Pidgeot and Execute, and it continues to dominate the Pokemon League. It absolutely wrecks Bruno, has a simple time dusting Agatha if you're fast enough, and you can send Lance back to the Ice Age. Blue is once again not much of a problem since he's basically running the same team as the Route 22 battle. Just watch out for his Arcanine, and you shouldn't really have much of an issue. It's a really good Pokemon for the story, but due to its elongated way of getting one, it might be better to find another Pokemon to fit the role, and there are much better options for this role as well. If you haven't noticed already, there's a lot of Pokemon sharing the same types. That continues here since our 6th best Pokemon is actually Alakazam. It's one of the earliest Pokemon you can get on this list, that being on Route 24 just north of Cerulean City, but it's another Psychic type. But this doesn't break the rule, since other Psychic types are identified as other types for this list. But looking at the matchups to further prove that a Psychic type is needed for your team, it really does show that you need one. With great matchups against Koga and Giovanni's Nidoqueen and Nidoking, while going neutral for every other gym leader, it won't ever drag you down. This continues versus Blue, as Alakazam does not have any weaknesses to any of his Pokemon, bar the random bite on his Gyarados, Blastoise, and Arcanine, but you should handle him easily. When you get to the Elite Four, you have a much better time dealing with the Pokemon than Executor and Jinx could, as Alakazam goes even with Lorelei and Lance, but trucks Bruno and Agatha, and also can go toe-to-toe with Blue's Pokemon once more. But again, watch out for Bite. Really solid Pokemon, as its speed is pretty helpful, and remember, crits are accounted by speed in Generation 1, so use that to your advantage. Now, I really didn't want to include any legendary Pokemon, but I mathed them out anyways. Is mathed a word? And it turns out, most of them are available too late, or they really suck. In Zapdos' case, it's available mid-game in the power plant, and it does decently against the story, but not too overpowered like Rayquaza in Emerald. Like I said though, Zapdos is available in the power plant, which is only accessible once you get the Soul Badge from Koga, allowing you to use HM03 Surf. Knowing this fact, we can check in with the second half of the game, as we really haven't had to judge an electric type yet. But is it because the electric types suck in this game? Well, let's find out. Zapdos has a mixed bag of advantages and disadvantages. It goes even to the likes of Sabrina, Blaine, and Giovanni in both battles, but where it really picks up are in the battles versus the Elite Four in Blue, in Silphco, and in Route 22, where it easily handles any of the 3 starters, Pidgeot, and vaporizes Gyarados. As for the Elite Four, it can make swift work of Lorelei and Bruno, goes even with Agatha, and is slightly walled by Lance. And then the results are the same versus Blue, as he is the same team as he did in Route 22. Overall, if you plan on using a legendary for your Kanto team, I highly suggest Zapdos. So normally, as long as at least one of the starter Pokemon doesn't suck complete ditch water, I will always include one of them in these lists. At the same time, if it qualifies, I'll be including legendaries as well, hence Zapdos just appearing. And although in Eriyzo's video for the best starter in Kanto was Bulbasaur, this is before he switched to a system accounting for every important battle. He only counted for those in the Kanto League. If you include the likes of Blue and Team Rocket, it really hampers what Bulbasaur can do. But where Bulbasaur fails in those battles, Squirtle does that much better. Even though Bulbasaur, right out the gate, can do wonders versus the first few gyms, it remains lackluster in the second half. But this is where Blastoise feeds. Blastoise early on does have issues with Lieutenant Surge, Erica, and Blue's Venusaur. It doesn't have a problem versus Brock, and that's where we get into the second half of the game. Like I said, Blastoise doesn't need to take them out to dinner first. Annihilating Blaine, Giovanni all 3 times, Bruno's Onixes, it's really just insane on how powerful it is. Although it does turn plain against Lorelei, Agatha, and Lance, Blastoise can hold its own against Blue yet again in the final battle as long as you avoid his Venusaur. Once more, while Eriyzo said that Venusaur was the best, it truly is a better choice to go with Blastoise. Here's the part of the top 10 where it becomes highly obvious which are the best types for Kanto. You'll see why, since this Pokemon shares the same typing with Blastoise, and also includes the Ice type. It's Cloyster! Now then, due to needing the Super Rod to get a shelter in the first place, it misses on a lot of the first half of the game. That does not stop Cloyster though. It dominates in quite a few battles, such as the battles against Blaine, both against Giovanni, Blue's Venusaur, Pidgeot, and Growlithe, and later Rhyhorn, Bruno's pair of Onixes, Lance, and once more against Blue's championship team. Whew, that's a lot! The Ice and the Water type together create the perfect pair. Well, maybe not so perfect. Cloyster does struggle against the other half of Bruno's team, while remaining mostly average against Agatha, Sabrina, and Koga. Overall, it's a really solid Ice type, and the best, but it's not the best Water type. Now, if you have the patience to add this next Pokemon on your team, I commend you, since it's the latest Pokemon you can get on this list, and you obtain it at level 5. It'll take a lot of work to get Almostar up to par, but for effectiveness, it will be worth it. After getting the Helix Fossil on Mount Moon, you can revive it all the way in Cinnabar Island, but at that point, it's missed most of the game. But does this matter? Not at all. It comes out hitting a grand slam against both Blaine and Giovanni, and tears Blue a new one as long as you're not facing either of his grass types. It then thrashes Lorelei, Lance, and Blue once again. The only problem Almostar faces is against Bruno, as it's weak to his fighting types. What a show this Pokemon puts on! But why is it not the best Pokemon for your team in Kanto? Well, with such a small pool of data to use, it didn't quite get a better score than the best Pokemon on this list. 5 quick honorable mentions. I do want to give credit where credit is due. Dodrio, the best plain flying type. It just barely missed the top 10 by a few points. Dugtrio. Although this Pokemon can carry you mid-game, it begins to sputter out near the end. Snorlax. This Pokemon is good and all, but without a weakness to exploit using its stab moves, it struggles a bit. Arcanine. Fire types just don't stack up very well in the Kanto League, hence why also Charizard is playing the game on hard mode if you pick him as a starter. Venusaur. I said it before, Venusaur does very well in the Kanto League, but falls short due to the battles with Giovanni and Blue. I just had to update the system to realize this. So, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and check out the best Pokemon for your team in Kanto. And here we are! After all of this, we get to see what is deemed the best Pokemon for your Kanto team. Out of all of the Pokemon we have gone through, we can tell the 3 best types to have are Ice, Psychic, and Water. And go figure, the best Pokemon is 2 of the 3 types. But we've already had one of each pair except for one. I'll give you 5 seconds to think about it. Quickly, let me know in the comments, and I'll give you cookies if you can get it. If you said Starmie, well, you're absolutely correct. Starmie is the best Pokemon you can pick from in Kanto. Although you will need a Super Rod, which is nearly after Koga, it is well worth the wait. This is going to be a long list. Be warned. Starmie does well against Blaine, both Giovanni battles, Blue's starter, Growlithe and Rhyhorn, Bruno, Agatha, and Blue yet again in the championship battle. Whew, that's a lot. It's so good that it nearly doesn't have any matchup to worry about in these important battles, as no dark types exist during this story. The only ghost types in the game are weak to the psychic type, and in Kanto, bug types aren't common enough to drag it down. The only real struggle it has is against Lance's dragons and Blue's grass type. It can coast through most of these battles, and that's why it's the best Pokemon for your Kanto team. With that, that will wrap up the top 10 best Pokemon for your Kanto team. Did I miss a Pokemon? Be sure to let me know in the comment section below, as I'm open to seeing all types of opinions. That's how we spark conversation, you know. If you enjoyed and want to be the best, be sure to drop a like and subscribe to start the climb today. With that, I want to thank you for watching, and I hope to catch you back at the top later on, because that's how we do it.